Hey, Sam.
Hey, Bev, what you drinking?
Oh, I'm drinking a beer that I found at a little tiny gas station in Van Wert, Ohio. Um,
Oh,
it's a brew dog, Pina Playa, and it's a
oh,
pina colada goza with natural flavors.
what kind of gas station were you at? That's fancy.
I know, right? They have like one little cooler and it's stuffed to the brim with craft beer. So every time we go visit Jared's parents, we go rate it because we always find something kind of cool. And I saw this Pina Playa and I was like, yeah, I know it's supposed to be pumpkin beer season, but like, I'm sorry, who can pass up a pina colada like inspired beer?
And I know that you said we weren't going to talk about the weather, but you did say it's like 80, so you need a pina colada.
Yeah, I agree. And that's all we'll say about the weather.
Yeah. I'm also going to state that it's 51 up here right now, so WTF, because we're not that far apart.
No, we're really not. And I drove back from Jared's parents just a couple hours ago and it was hot there too. And that's only 2 hours south of you, 2.5 hours south of you. So,
So weird. Okay, but we're done talking about the weather now. So,
well, I am a little sad though that we were so close and I didn't make it up to go see you. So I'm sorry for that.
I mean, I'm totally not ready for gas anyways. So actually though, my house is very clean right now because we had my stepdaughter's birthday party yesterday. So you could have like at least thought that, my house was clean. So yeah, it's that clean all the time.
There we go.
No, it's not.
So what are you drinking?
So I decided just to go pretty simple and I'm having a Jack and Ginger. So just Jack Daniels and ginger ale. Because I normally don't have Vernors in my house, but my mom drinks Vernors. So I had it for her yesterday and she didn't even open it.
Oh,
And usually I only drink Diet Pop, but for, Jack and Ginger, I can make an exception.
yeah,
And just
I
have
totally agree with that.
little bit of sugar before I get back on the low carb bandwagon tomorrow.
Oh, that wagon.
Oh,
There's
that
something about that
freaking
seat.
wagon.
It's really hard to sit on. So
Yeah.
falling off of it a lot.
Yeah, but at least there's cheese on
That's
that
true.
wagon. I can
That's
eat
a good
cheese.
point.
Mhm.
I would ride that wagon. Although I don't know, there's not donuts on that wagon, are there?
No, there is not. There are no donuts.
Oh, maybe I
Although
will.
there are recipes for keto donuts, but I'm pretty sure like Krispy Kreme cannot be replicated even in keto form. So,
Yeah, I would totally agree with that.
yeah.
Well, welcome listeners to We Drink and We Farm Things.
Yeah, it's a podcast where we drink and we talk about farming things. And we go off on tangents like about the weather or keto or something because we really like tangents.
We should just call this podcast like, I don't know, Tangent Epicenter. I don't know.
Yeah. We drink and we go on tangents and there's some farming sprinkled in it, but that's like a really long title, so I don't think it's
Yeah.
going to work.
And it's not nearly as catchy if you ask me.
No. No. So we'll keep it simple.
There we go. Well,
And,
and normally we BS before the episode so that we can stick the BS up on the Patreon. But this week we did something different. We decided to record one of those mini-sodes we've been promising you guys. So no BS this week, just a mini-sode. But if you haven't been listening to the BS, you can catch up to it on the Patreon. And there will be a link to the Patreon in the show notes.
Yes, and that is free to everyone. But just to warn you, Sam has dropped the F-bomb over there. So if you have small children, this podcast in general isn't appropriate for children, but the BS is really not appropriate for small children. So keep that in mind while you listen to us.
That's totally true. And also, speaking of the Patreon, our drinks this episode were sponsored by my childhood friend, Jessica Hawkins.
Yay!
So cheers, Jessica. Thank you.
Yes, and you can find her over on the Instagram at It's Just the Hot Mess, which just makes me feel like I would like her in real life too.
Yeah, you would totally like her in real life. Next time she's back in the States, I'll make sure that we can like connect with her.
Oh yeah, that would be fun.
Yeah, because she tends to travel the country when she's back because her husband's in the military. So depends on where they get stationed when they come back. Hopefully it's somewhere
gotcha.
nearby. Although she's over there cringing like, no, I don't want to get stationed to the Midwest. Bev, what are you trying to do to me?
She's like, so boring. But then she could have chickens. Unless she has to live like on a base or something, then she probably can't. But
I know that she wants to have alpacas.
Ooh, good choice.
Yep. I told her I would use the alpaca fiber to spin it into some yarn. So
See, that's such a good friendship. She's like the yin to your yang.
that's true. That's probably why we've been friends since we were like 4.
Yeah, that's pretty serious.
It's our 30-year friendiversary this year.
So
Happy
how
friendiversary,
appropriate with the 30th episode of We Drink and We Farm Things.
Oh my goodness, that was totally an accident. I've had lots of happy accidents lately, so
Well, that's good because you had some bad accidents a few months ago. So
good point.
I think your karma's like turning around and you're having some good things now.
Right?
It was rough there for a while for you.
It's getting better. We're getting back on the smoothness wagon.
That's good. And then now my life is chaos. So we're just taking turns.
That's why there's 2 people per podcast. That helps.
Yeah. Again, it's that whole balance thing.
Right?
So what else do we need to remind our lovely listeners of this month or this episode?
If you are a Patreon subscriber at the swag level, Sam will be making your gifts and sending them out sometime this month. Give her a little time though. She's kind of going crazy at work right now. But I'll have the list to her by the time this episode drops, and then hopefully she'll get them out in a week or 2. But you guys will be getting a surprise. So yay! And thank you for supporting our podcast.
Yeah. And that'll be a great excuse for me to do something kind of fun. Because I do like making stuff for you guys. And it warms my heart that you guys, support us on Patreon because you don't have to. So it's really sweet and it's fun. So thanks, guys.
That's right. And thanks to you guys, you'll notice that the noises are different for our sponsors. So yeah, there's that.
Yeah, that's because of you guys.
Yeah, that's all because of Patreon. We don't have a theme song yet, but they are working on it, and we have bounced some ideas around already. So we'll be getting that soon. Maybe I don't want to promise any timelines. I have no idea, but it's being worked on, so I can promise you that much.
That's a big deal.
Yeah, that is a big deal. And it takes time to compose music and come up with stuff. So we're going to be patient with them, and it's some friends that are making it, which is going to make it even extra special.
That's so cool. I can't wait to hear it.
And don't forget to join our Facebook group.
Yes. If you search We Drink and We Farm Things over on Facebook, it should pop right up. You'll see our page and our group. But definitely join the group. You'll have to answer a couple of questions so we make sure you're not a robot, and that you have good intentions. So there's that. But we have a lot of fun in there. It's really been cool the past week to see people posting pictures and asking questions, because that's exactly what we want. We don't want it to be the Bev and Sam show in there. We want you guys to feel empowered to post things and get feedback from each other, not just from me and Bev. So good job, guys, that are in there. And if you're not, go check it out.
Yeah, and we also need you to take our survey. We've been getting some sponsors. I swear it's my first beer.
Lies.
That's right. We did a mini-sode. This is beer number 2. Woo! We've been getting some sponsorship opportunities, and that survey helps us out with it. It's totally anonymous. You get to give us some feedback on the podcast. So please use this opportunity to give us some real anonymous feedback that can make this podcast only better. And help us get more sponsors. There will be a link to the survey in the show notes. So go click on that and take it. We will be forever in your debt if you do it. I mean, yes. I can't promise what we're going to do. We'll continue making this podcast. That's a good promise.
Yeah. No, I think that's fantastic promise.
There we go. If you take it, we'll continue making this podcast. So there you go. Go do it.
Ooh, I just slurped. I hope that didn't. Sorry, guys.
And review us in all the places.
Yes. Yes, please review us. It's been since August since we've been reviewed over on Apple Podcasts. And that really helps us out too, because it boosts us a little bit, raises some visibility, which means that we can bring you more content if, we're out there and people are seeing our little logo and checking us out. So please go do that.
Yeah, and I don't know, Sam, did you go review any of the podcasts that you listen to for good podcast karma?
I did.
Oh, I
I
did
reviewed
too.
like
Woohoo!
3.
High five. I did that also.
I'm not gonna lie, it was definitely when I was going to the bathroom and I was bored and had my phone out and I was like, oh yeah, I said I was gonna do this. Which that was probably all TMI for everybody, but okay, don't
Oh,
pretend like you don't look at your phone while you're on the toilet. So,
well, but you know
you
what?
know.
That's good advice. So if they're thinking to themselves, they don't have time to review our podcast, well, now you just gave them some time. So excuse is gone.
Yeah, exactly. You're welcome.
But this is the exciting part. Housekeeping corner is over. So now it's time for a
Yay.
farming corner. Nah, this is just the whole
Yeah.
episode. It's not really farming
Yeah.
corner.
We don't have to correct ourselves or follow up with anything this week. We were just that good.
Well, it's just that I don't have anything yet.
Yeah.
So
We can always
maybe
correct
we'll get
ourselves
some.
later. Yeah.
Yeah. That's right. We're just like diving into all the things on this episode.
Yes.
Hey, Sam, is it that time of the month for you too?
Bev, I don't know that we should talk about that on the podcast.
What time of the month are you talking about? I'm talking about when we get our Henny and Rue boxes.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no. Yeah. You mean the monthly surprise box for chickens and the people that love them?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Okay. Now that we're on the same page, yes. I love that time of the month. It's great.
It's so exciting to get useful things like for my flock and extra surprises for myself.
Yes, and I love that we get to offer our listeners 10% off their first box when they use the code DRINKANDFARM at checkout.
And you can also save 10% off the whole store when you become a subscriber, kind of like a VIP. So go sign up, hennyandrue.com.
All right, so I guess we can get to the nitty gritty, which is kind of an appropriate little catchphrase for what you've been dealing with over on your farm.
That's right. We have bumblefoot for the first time.
Dun dun dun.
I was wondering if you were going to make a woo noise, and I was going to say that's so inappropriate, but you made the right noise. So
Yeah, that's definitely not a woohoo because it is a pain in the butt. Well, pain in the foot for the chicken, I guess, but it's not fun to deal with.
yeah, no, it's not. So bumblefoot is the term used to describe an infection that develops on a chicken's foot, and it is clinically referred to as plantar pododermatitis. Give that a try.
Pododermatitis.
There we go.
This dermatitis is like a skin thing. That's the only reason I knew that because, you know, they have like the psoriasis or eczema commercials.
And
they
podo
say
means foot.
Oh, well, shoot. That makes sense. Good job, medical professionals. Oh my God. We're so smart. Together, we are so smart.
That's why we're a team.
Yes.
And bumblefoot happens when the skin of the foot gets compromised in some way. Normally, like there's a cut or it's been really wet, so the skin on the foot gets really soft. Or even if they have like scaly leg mites and it's opening up the scales on their feet, that can allow infection to get in because that compromises the foot as well. And the broken skin allows a bacteria to get inside the foot, and it's specifically a staph bacteria. I'm not even going to try to pronounce this word either. Staphylococcus.
Let's see. Staphylococcus. No, I think you're pretty close.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's basically a staph infection is what the chicken gets in their foot. So it's a pretty serious infection. It's definitely not a laughing matter.
No.
So when you find bumblefoot on your chicken's feet or on a foot, it is unfortunately something that you've got to kind of get on right away.
Right. And if, you know, I'm kind of jumping ahead here, but I'll just throw it out there. If you are going to try to go the surgical route or take that scab off, you want to be wearing gloves or be ready to wash your hands immediately. You want to make sure you don't have any cuts on your hands if you're going gloveless because you can get a staph infection, obviously. So you want to be very careful handling that.
Yeah, it's absolutely something that's spreadable to humans.
Yes. And it's, you know, it seems kind of easier to want to use your nails if you're trying to get that scab off, but you need to wear gloves. So I will throw that out there.
See, and I'm the worst. I removed it with my fingernails and I didn't wear gloves because I needed my nail to like pop it off. But I washed and disinfected my hands right away. And I disinfected her whole feet and all of the surfaces before we even started as well. But we'll get into the story of how I did that in just a minute, because the first thing that I wanted to address about bumblefoot is one of the things that was a little disheartening while I was doing research on it is I sort of feel like the blogs have sort of turned into an echo chamber of each other. Like the number one thing that I was reading was that it's rare, and that you have an issue if your flock gets it, and there are all of these things that you can do to prevent it. But like, I'm sorry, short of putting boots on my chicken, there's not really a whole lot that we could have done necessarily to prevent it. If you have that staph bacteria living in your soil, you're going to end up with chickens that have bumblefoot eventually, because chickens walk and they get cuts and they get scrapes. And
Exactly. And chickens do whatever the hell they want. So they'll get into things that if they free range at all, they're going to get into things. You know, we have like gravel in spots, we have cement here. Like they're jumping off and down off of stuff, they're jumping into trees. Like, okay, are your chickens really that well mannered and prissy that they don't, it's like the same chickens that probably don't pick up dead frogs and parade them around the yard. Like,
or
I
chickens
guess,
that don't like maggots.
yeah, exactly. Like our chickens are just, when they have time to free range, they're gonna get into stuff. There's nothing you can do to fully control everything you're doing, other like you said in the notes here, other than helicopter chicken mothering. It's not gonna happen, especially if you have a flock of like over 4, because you can't keep tabs on them 24/7.
Well, and one of the number one things that was pointed out as a cause of it was a dirty coop. But I mean, I don't see that as really being the reason why your chicken ends up with bumblefoot. I mean, as soon as I change the straw in my chicken's coop, they poop in it.
Yeah.
So the coop ends up kind of always having some semblance of chicken shit in it. So short of cleaning it every day or, at least taking all of the poop out, I just don't see any way to keep the coop that clean. This is just like real chicken talk here.
Yeah, and it takes like 2 seconds for them to scrape their foot on something random and then step in their poop. That's all it takes. Like, you can't prevent them from stepping in something they shouldn't step in.
Well, and that said, there is one change that we did end up making in our coop, because I have this chicken that has bumblefoot, and it's a very specific chicken that ended up with the bumblefoot. I don't know if you remember that video that I posted on Instagram of the chicken that flies off the top rafters and then hits the wall every morning.
Yeah.
That's the chicken that got bumblefoot. So
of course.
she flies all the way up to the top rafter, roosts up there, and then she jumps down every morning. I think that impact on her feet ended up causing some sort of abrasion or some sort of cut, or maybe just compromised the foot pad in some way, because both of her feet have bumblefoot on them. One of them has the kernel. The other one is just really red and swollen. So right now I'm just treating it with draw salve. But we took that roost away. It turned out that wasn't even nailed down inside the ceiling of the coop. It was just like balanced up there. Yeah, my husband walked right in and pushed the board up and then turned sideways, and it came right out.
Oh.
So he walked it out and he's like, all right, problem solved. I'm like, well, geez.
She's probably so disappointed when you did that, though.
She was so angry at me when I went to go do the count that night. She was sitting in the area where she normally goes to fly up to it, and she was giving me the evil eye. I am the meanest chicken mom ever, because not only have I been wrapping both of her feet like a boxer, but she's been getting way more attention than she cares for, because she's one of the Easter egger chickens, or well, I guess she's my only Easter egger chicken now.
Oh.
Because Carol Pacey was the other one, and she has died. Rest in peace, Carol Pacey.
Yes.
But yeah, and Easter eggers aren't super keen on, or at least my Easter eggers aren't super keen on affection. They're sort of like the wildest of the chickens that I have, or at least they're the most squirrely personality wise.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, our Easter eggers are a little. Well, our Easter egger Lavender Orpington mix, she's just a sweetie. But the Easter egger, yeah, but the Easter egger Lavender Orpington roosters all have been crazy. So I like her. I named her Bellatrix.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, because I originally named Snape Bellatrix, but Snape went to Chicken Heaven. We called him because he was so rude. So yeah.
I'm sorry to hear that. I really liked Snape.
Yeah, he was a real asshole though, so he had it coming, and that's just the attitude I take towards roosters in general now. Is like if you behave yourself and you're nice to the ladies, because obviously they're a little awkward for a while and they're a little rough with the ladies. But if they calm down, then they can stay. But anyways, that's just a side tangent. Remember when we said we like to go on tangents?
Well, at least this was
there you
a
go.
farming tangent. I mean, come
Yeah.
on, we get brownie points for that.
Yeah, we should. Ooh, brownies.
Well, anyways,
Yeah.
so
Back
if
to
you're looking,
Bumblefoot.
if you're looking for bumblefoot in your chickens, bumblefoot is characterized by some sort of swelling on the foot. It can show up on the bottom of the foot, or like in between the toes, or like even sometimes on the top of the toes, and their foot will feel hot because they'll have an infection. So there will be like a little bit of a fever going on in there. Sometimes, and I feel like I want to say most of the time, by the time it's caught, there's a big black scab in the middle of it. And that's how you know where the kernel of the infection is going to be at. Bumblefoot caught early is just the red and the swelling. But once the infection really sets in, it's got the scab on it. And normally you find it because your chicken started limping, which means that they've had it for a while. So unless you do a foot check on your chickens super often, you're probably not going to just see the red and the swelling. You're more likely to see the black scab.
Yep, exactly. And we've had chickens have it on the bottom of their foot, and then we had one that had it kind of on the top too, and it almost looked like a boil. It didn't really look like bumblefoot. But that one, we ended up going the acetaminophen route, and it took longer to get rid of, but it did go away. Thank God, because it looked like it was going to burst. It can be quite disgusting to look at.
Oh my gosh, I bet. Well, and one of the reasons why you want to check for bumblefoot every now and then, or at least check the bottom of your chicken's feet when they're limping, is because left untreated, bumblefoot can be fatal because the infection can spread into the rest of their foot tissue or even into the bones. And sometimes when a serious case has healed, the foot or toes might have a scar or an abnormal appearance, or your chicken might limp for life because of the amount of tissue that was damaged by it. So bumblefoot really is something that you have to take seriously. I'm not saying that you have to check your chicken's feet every night, because like I only have 8 chickens and I still don't do that. But if you see an abnormality on their foot, you want to start digging into it. Well, not like, literally digging into it, but
Well,
doing
you
some
might
research.
wanna.
It kind of depends on whether or not it's bumblefoot. We'll get into that. I keep jumping ahead of myself. So that you can see if it's something that you need to treat, because bumblefoot can get really serious real fast. So
But yeah, now I think we can start talking about treatment though, right?
oh yeah, for sure. Now we've explained what it is.
Yeah, so I've had chickens. We've gone a few different routes, and I think I've mentioned it before, but we haven't done like a deep dive on the podcast. So I've tried cutting it out before, which involves soaking in Epsom salts for 15 to 20 minutes, and then using like a razor and tweezers and anything else. Some people use like legit surgical scalpels. It helps if you have one person hold the chicken and another person do the surgery. But I've never like truly felt successful in the surgery because I'm just kind of squeamish, and like I have to remind myself, like, don't lock your knees. Don't lock your knees. Breathe through your nose.
Because the last thing you need to do is pass out while you're holding a scalpel, right?
Exactly. And it can be bloody, and the chicken's mad, and then you're in there prodding around. So I wouldn't call it like super successful, but what you can do when you open it is, take that scab off, and sometimes you're lucky enough that some of the infection comes out with it. Sometimes you do have to dig around and squeeze and like give it hell, and it's not pretty, but you do want to try to get it out of there, or at least as much as possible. And what you can do is take Neosporin that doesn't have the pain reliever in it. That's very important for some reason. You just want the plain Neosporin, and you can pack that in there and wrap their foot. We usually do a spray of Vetricin too, and that tends to help. And then I know I've mentioned it before. Oh crap, what's it called? There's a local place where I get some tinctures from, and one of them is it's like
Harvest Moon.
Moonlight
Magic tinctures. No.
Moonlight herbs. We'll link it in the show notes. We'll find it and link it. But she's local to me. and she does super fast shipping, but you can give that orally as well. Um, and there's no egg withdrawal with that, which is really nice. Like I said before, too, we went the acetaminophen route for Cosmo, one of our Polish chickens. We put it in the water for 7 days. I had her separated. And because she's only, well, we only have 2 white egg layers. So with that, you have the 7 day withdrawal of her taking it on top of an extra 21 days for it to work out of the system. So I just threw away the white eggs for like a month, which was a little sad, but I had her separated for the 7 days that she was drinking the water. And I put one of our roosters in there too to like keep her company. So she wouldn't be too upset. So he got it too, which I'm sure that's controversial on some level, but whatever. He's a bantam. We're not trying to eat him. But I didn't want her to be lonely, so we did it that way. There are also tablets you can give them. I'm sure you can dissolve them down and give them to them. But that is an option. Hers was so bad that I didn't feel comfortable trying to cut it open. So that's why we tried that way. But I've also seen recently a lot of people trying to use drawing cells. So I mentioned that to Bev and another friend of mine who has bumblefoot right now in her flock. So I'm curious to know how that's working for you.
So we discovered the bumblefoot last Sunday when I was putting the chickens away. Honey Shaker was limping, and I turned her over, and we snapped a picture of it right away, and I sent it to Sam, and I was like, "Is this bumblefoot?" Like it was this like crusty, disgusting like hole in the bottom of her foot, and Sam was like, "Yeah,
that was gross."
I mean, and it's a super big scab. So she had it for a long time, and like I said, she's the chicken that jumps down like from all the way from the roof of the coop every day down to the floor, so I'm not super surprised that she was going to end up with it. So what we did was we just disinfected it with, well, I washed it first with soap and water, and then we disinfected it with the Vetricin, and then we put a big old dollop of draw salve on it, covered it with gauze, and then wrapped her foot up like a boxer. And at that time I didn't think to check her other foot. I saw the one because that was the one that she was limping on, and we treated it. And what I did was I left it on for 3 days, and then I checked it again. And when I checked it on day number 3 was when I discovered that she had bumblefoot in the other foot. It's not nearly as bad. There's no scab. It's just red and swollen. So I was like, well, all right. So now that we've established that she has it in both feet, I went ahead and did an Epsom salt soak on it. And then I tested her scab with my fingernail to see if the draw salve had loosened it up again, or loosened it up enough to pull it off. And it hadn't. So we re-disinfected both feet with Vetricin, wrapped with the gauze, rewrapped in the vet wrap like boxer hands, and then let her go again. And then on Friday we checked her again, so that was 2 more days. I opened up her feet. The one that didn't have the scab on it, the swelling is starting to go down, so I just disinfected it, put more draw salve on it, and rewrapped it. The other one, the scab lifted when I stuck my fingernail under it. So I used my fingernails and I just slowly pulled out every piece of the scab that I could. And it only bled a little bit because one of the reasons why I was afraid to get in there with a sharp tool or a scalpel was I can't tell the difference between infected tissue and good tissue. And I didn't want to cut good tissue out of her foot. So I thought that my fingernail was the best tool to use because I can be a little more precise with it, and I'm not, it's not super sharp. So if I'm wiggling on something and it's not coming loose, it's just not coming out. That has to stay for now. But I did manage to get almost all of the infection out, and the cheesy gunk that they talk about, that is the infection part, a lot of that came out on the bottom of the scab. So she had a big hole in her foot and a little remnant of scab on the outside, but the middle was totally empty. And I'm the worst Instagrammer and podcaster and blogger ever. I didn't take a picture of it because I was just so focused on getting it done, because so it like shit got real when we were trying to pull the scab out. The blogs will tell you that yes, the chickens are feeling pain, but they aren't going to act like it. She was shaking. She was shaking so hard. My husband had her, what we did was we wrapped her in a towel, but left her head out because the towel kept her wings pressed up against her body. Yeah. And her head was out, and my husband was just stroking her head and talking to her. while I was
Sorry.
it's all right. Was just stroking her head and talking to her while I was pulling the kernels out, and she just like would not stop shaking. So I got as much of
Oh,
it as I
yeah.
could. I re-washed the wound with just water, and then I sprayed it with Vetricin, repacked it full of draw salve just in case there was more infection. I figured the draw salve could help get it out.
Right.
Plus, like the draw salve that I got, it's made by the Amish, so it's filled with like lavender oil and comfrey and things that are just like good
Oh,
for
cool.
skin regeneration to begin with. So I figured it was pretty harmless to stick inside the wound. It wasn't going to make it any worse. And I
Right.
rewrapped her foot. And that was Friday. Today is Sunday when we're recording, and I haven't gotten back out there to look at it. So sometime tonight we'll pull her down when she roosts, and my husband and I will retreat and rewrap and then put her back up on the roost.
Aw.
We figure that'll be the least the least traumatic to her.
Yeah.
Because I'll tell you the story of when I went to put her away, because I posted it on Instagram, because
I
it was
saw
just like
that.
such a terrible time. I'll tell that after we're done talking about Bumblefoot, though, so that I don't
Okay.
confuse the like funny, hilarious stuff with like the serious things that we're trying to learn.
Yeah, and I will say, like, chickens, oh gosh, they're so much easier to deal with bumblefoot than ducks are, because we've had our one of our male pecans, Reginald, he had it in his foot. He actually had it in both feet, but one foot was so bad. And he lived in a dog crate in the house for a while because it was winter time, so it was really hard to soak his foot and then take him back outside. Like, I felt bad. He probably would have been fine, but he was just living inside, like on puppy pads and a towel. And he had a big bowl of water, which was always stocked with grubblies. So I made sure he was drinking water, because you can also put apple cider vinegar in their water, and that can help with that as well. Which with chickens, as long as it's not super hot out, apple cider vinegar once in a while in their water is perfectly fine too. It's
And if
actually really
your
good for them.
water isn't metal, it cannot be a metal water. It has to be plastic.
Yep. Exactly. Yeah, so many things to worry about. Is it hot enough? Is my water metal? um, but yeah, so ducks are just a little harder to treat because they're wrapping their feet is more difficult. Obviously, with the chickens, they have the toes and there's no webbing, so that's a little easier. Wrapping a duck foot, you do kind of have to kind of, I don't know how to
Like make them a boot.
squish it. Yeah, you got to squish it a little bit. I tried doing like the cardboard thing so it was like flat, and that was just a disaster, and he hated it and it didn't work. Again, it's one of those things you see in the blogs and you're like, I can do that. And then no, you can't. It probably takes some practice. But I would just wrap it and just change it every day with him. We went the surgical route with him, which ducks are way stronger than chickens with their wings. So and he felt it because he would try to bite us too.
Yeah.
Which being bit by a duck is a little more intense than by a chicken too. So just for your own future reference, ducks are going to be way more of a pain in the butt about it than chickens are. But it's just because they're in pain. And they're scared too. Even if it's not that they're in pain, they're very scared because, you're poking around with their foot and you're holding them in a towel. So just keep that in mind when you're trying to do this. But I'm definitely going to pick up some drawing salve because that sounds far less traumatic. And, if it's something that you are able to catch early enough, that sounds like a good option to me, because the surgical route can create more problems too if you really don't know what you're doing. So I'm going to try that route next time, along with that is it milestone moonlight? I don't remember, guys. I feel so bad.
The tincture.
I'm screwing up.
The tincture.
Yeah.
I always say that wrong.
It's like a magical potion for bumblefoot.
There we go.
We'll just call it that. I've picked up some of her her sauerkraut one is really good too, and that's a lifesaver. So I highly recommend that one as well.
I wish I could remember the episode where we talked about them. It was one of the early ones.
Yeah.
But I know some people bought it after that episode because Elder Oaks Farm messaged me and let me know that she had used the Bumblefoot tincture a couple of times. But she
Okay.
said she would feel better if she had something to put on the actual wound. So that she and I chatted about draw salve. So that's... I think I'm going to order some of that tincture to have on hand for next time. But actually, bumblefoot takes weeks to treat.
Yeah.
So even if I order it now, I'm still going to be treating Honey Shaker's bumblefoot regardless when it arrives. So it's not too late.
It's moonlightmileherbs.com.
There we go.
Boom. I found it. Yeah. I got some of their dewormer too. I haven't tried it yet. Because we haven't had any problems right now, but I have it on hand now, so I don't have to worry about ordering it and waiting for it. So it's all natural stuff, and I'm a fan. So check her out.
Well, it's definitely not hurting. You know, my thought is that prevention is key. So if you can use like all of the right, good clean coop practices, good animal husbandry, give them the preventative stuff first. Then if that doesn't work, then you start doing the more serious interventions like that. Even with the draw salve on the bottom of the bumblefoot, I don't think that was ever going to come out on its own. That was going to require some sort of intervention on our part. I just tried to pick the intervention that I thought was going to be the least traumatic for everybody. But, there's no getting around the fact that you're going to have to take it out eventually.
Yes. It's just how easy it comes out.
And I'll keep everybody updated on how it goes. It's only been a week, so we're still not done treating it, unfortunately. So next week, there will be a follow-up on it on how it's going, and probably even into the week after that. So we're not veterinarians, obviously. We probably should have started this section by saying that.
Yeah.
So our advice is only
know by now, but we might have some new people.
We couldn't pronounce any of the actual clinical terms properly, so hopefully that was their clue. But this is just our real experience with dealing with bumblefoot, so we'll keep you apprised on what ends up happening with that.
Yes.
But I could tell that Honey Shaker was super unhappy with what we had done to try to treat her bumblefoot, because when I went to go put her back on Friday, I was walking her out, and it had been kind of a long day to begin with. And I had her wrapped in a towel. She started fighting me and pecking at me, and then she crapped all over me. And I was dressed to go to the football game because it was a home football game on Friday. I was like, dang it, Honey Shaker. So I dropped her out of surprise, because suddenly she must have saved it all, because it was a ton all over my shirt and my pants, and it leaked into my boots. And I was like, I'm like, oh, well, I had the towel still. So I was like, well, I'll just catch her and I'll put her back in the coop. She would not let me catch her. So I was like, well, I'll just go over to the coop and open the door and try to shoo her in, or, coax her to go in, because she wanted to be back with her flock mates. I opened the door and she started to act like she was going to go into it. And then she darted under it instead and ran around. So I went to go try to catch her, and all the other chickens got out.
Oh my God.
So then I'm standing there covered in chicken poop, super frustrated because it's late in the afternoon. All of the chickens are out. I don't have any treats on me. And I'm just I give up. This is the hardest thing ever. Forget it. The chickens are free ranging now. I don't want to do this anymore. And I went inside and was like, Jared, the chickens are out. It's your job to put them away.
Help me.
What did I do? He's like, what do you mean the chickens are out? I'm like, Honey Shaker, let the chickens out. I can't get him to go in. I'm covered in chicken poop. I'm going to go change my clothes. He's like, whoa, whoa, whoa.
I mean, that's what he gets for asking.
Right? I felt super bad, though. My patience were at a 0. Plus, I was feeling a little guilty about, Honey Shaker's bleeding and shaking.
Yeah. And I've done that with the goats before, where I just start yelling at them because they're just being goats. It's usually when I have to take care of them myself for whatever reason, and they're trying to get out, or they're jumping on me, and I'm trying to get the hay in, and so just be just freaking stop already. And they just look at you what's your problem?
Why are you yelling at us?
It can be so frustrating sometimes.
Right.
Oh, speaking of goats, so you had your first goat hoof trimming expedition, I saw.
Oh yeah, we did. That was what we did for Sunday Fun Day. We ended up not building we ended up not building garden beds. We hoisted the kayaks up in the rafters of the barn so that we had room for hay for the winter. And
Hmm.
then I learned how to pull the tractor in and out of the barn so that we could move it when we needed to. And we
Yay.
thought it would be wise to trim the goat's hooves.
Yeah, I guess it's probably about that time for them too, right?
Oh, yeah, it was super overdue. My goats are about 6 months old.
Mm-hmm.
And I probably should have started doing it when they were like 2 or 3 months old. I think I let it go a little too long this first time. But luckily, like, there's no permanent damage from it. It's just that you could tell that their hooves were overgrown because the very front of their hooves had kind of started coming to a point and sort of
Mm-hmm.
sticking up just a little bit, sort of like elf shoes, I guess, for
Yeah.
lack of a better way to describe it. And then on the bottom, the part of the hoof that had grown had started curling in
Mm-hmm.
underneath and sort of just like cracking a little bit. But there was no indication that like any like real damage or anything had been done. They're kind of like fingernails that get too long. They
Yeah.
start to kind of crack, get gunk stuck in them, and get kind of nasty. If you let that go on too long, it can be pretty serious for a goat. Goats'
Mm-hmm.
hooves absolutely have to be trimmed on a regular basis because they can end up with hoof rot from all of that extra hoof material trapping, like all the nasty stuff that they walk in their pasture. And that can
Yeah.
kind of fester in their hooves and cause an infection. And that can cause a goat to never walk normally again or like have
Yeah.
to have a leg amputated if it gets to be a really serious infection. So if you're going to have goats, unfortunately you're going to have to be okay with the idea of trimming their hooves, which can be kind
Yeah.
of traumatic for both you and them the first couple of times you do it because it's a little hard. They don't care for standing still or having you hold their feet or having you bring sharp objects near them.
Yeah. It's funny because I saw the way that you do it and it's completely different from how we do it. But I think a lot of people do it like the way you guys do, like with them standing up. Usually in a milk stand, I've seen it done.
Yeah, and in fact, we're
So
going to
so
build
they
a milk
can
stand because it took 4 adults to do it this time.
see. Usually I'm the one holding the goat, like setting them on my lap, like we're cuddling. And then my husband will do like 1 foot at a time. Some of them, like Diana and Cal, are super good about just sitting there and like chewing their cud and getting attention, and they'll just let them do it. But like Biscuit, Maya, and Loki, it just depends on their mood. And then it's like an arm workout because I'm holding them and trying to keep them from jerking around too much.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but I could see like if you were just letting them stand, how you would need like almost one person per leg.
Yep, that's exactly
Because,
what we did.
which is probably even more confusing to the goat because they're like, what the hell is
They're like,
happening?
why are all of these adults holding us down? Well, and what we did too. So, something else about the way that we ended up trimming our goats' hooves is I'm limited right now. Like, I can't actually pick up my goats
Yeah.
or do anything because of my back.
Mm-hmm.
So I can't be sitting on the ground doing it and I can't be crouching or bending over anything. So we did it in their pasture on top of their stool because they were up
Mm-hmm.
at my height while we did it. And in fact, yeah, the one picture that I posted of Coop's hoof facing me while I did it, that actually wasn't the way that I did it for most of them. Coop was standing really nicely like that. So I just picked his feet up forward and did it. Most of the time, though, I bent their foot backwards. Like, how do I describe this on a podcast? Like I kind of put their feet behind them so that I was working with their hoof pointing up towards the sky from the
Mm-hmm.
back. And then I was over top of it, just shearing flat. Like the way that I did
Yeah.
Coop's was kind of vertical because he sort of had his front leg lifted forward vertically. This stuff is impossible to describe on a podcast. You guys have no idea what I'm talking about. Like swinging my arms around, trying to show how the goat's moving their arms.
I don't know. It made a lot of sense to me, but I've
Did
also
it?
done
Okay,
it
good.
before. So I know what you're talking about because we kind of do that, but like they're laying down.
Yeah,
Because
and
we
well,
tried the standing thing before, and with just two people, it can be challenging.
in like May, she laid down. So what we actually did for some of them, the first couple of hooves that I did, because it was like, all right, we got 20 hooves. We're just going to do this one hoof at a time rather than trying to do one goat at a time. We were just whoever was standing still and let us do it. I'd do one hoof and then we'd let them go. And then we'd go back and work around like, whoever was willing to let us hold them for a minute to get one hoof done. We figured out after about 5 hooves that maybe they would stay still if we went and got a grain dish.
Oh.
So I actually filled it most of the way with alfalfa and just sprinkled a little bit of grain layers in them because they're babies, so they don't really need that much grain.
Right.
So I don't want to like overload their grain system, but I knew that the grain would hold their attention. And it did. Almost all of them were willing to put their face in the grain dish and let me finish. Yeah, once we figured that out. So
well, there you go.
That's a good tip if you don't have a milk stand and you don't have a ton of adults to hold your goat down. They'll stand still for grain.
Yeah, sometimes I get the licorice or banana treats from Tractor Supply. Free shout out for Tractor Supply. And I have those in my pocket and I'll give them a few like every couple of seconds or every couple minutes depending on how spastic they're being, and that definitely helps quite a bit. We also learned the hard way too that we have to separate them like one at a time to do it. So what we do is like one of us will go in the barn, we'll push one out into the pasture area and put the door down. And then we have to like rotate them in and out like that. Otherwise the other ones are like jumping on us or trying to see what we're doing, which is a disaster, especially when you have sharp object in your hand. So yeah.
I can totally see that. If we had been able to do that, I think we probably would have tried to separate them. But my goats are super dramatic when they're not all together. Like they immediately realize when somebody's missing and everyone will just start screaming their heads off.
Oh my gosh.
It's the weirdest thing ever. Well, I guess it's really not that weird. I mean, they're herd animals. So, I mean, and they've all grown up together. So they're like sounding the alarm, looking for who's missing.
And your setup is like completely different from mine too. So it just really depends on it's like one of those things where people have to find what works for them and just do that. Like we can give people examples, but every flock's different, every setup's different, and it took us quite a few times of figuring out what was going to work for us, especially after adding a couple more goats to the herd, because that just changes the dynamic completely.
Oh, yeah. I mean, and I'd say that we spent a good, I don't know, it was 4 of us. It probably took us a good hour or an hour and a half to get them totally trimmed. So, like, it wasn't like a joke of a time investment to get it all done, which is probably why I had been putting it off. Like, there's so many things that we're trying to do around here. And, with all my issues with my back and stuff, I didn't want to introduce something new that I needed to worry about. But trimming the hooves was surprisingly easy. You just look for the areas that appear to be overgrown. Any of the actual hoof material that appears to be a little cracked or curling, all of that has to go until it's flat. The pad on the bottom of the foot, all of that is just like cartilage growth. All of that needs to be trimmed so that their foot is flat. Some people file the goat's hooves so that they're totally and completely flat, but I didn't feel the need to do that. They didn't look like they were too rough or too uneven, so I just left them. And I used the tips of the shears to clean out any pasture that had been stuck, inside any of the grooves and whatnot of the hooves, just so that there wasn't stuff sitting in there rotting.
Right. Yeah, it's one of those things that is kind of difficult to explain, but once you do it, you realize it's not that bad. It's just more time consuming than anything else.
Yeah, because this was the first time, I was being pretty conservative with my cutting, just like taking a little bit at a time. But after I was about halfway through, I was like, wait, there's a lot of this that needs to go. So I started getting bigger chunks at a time. And in fact, I have a bottle of the blood stop powder inside my goat first aid kit. So I had that nearby so that if I cut too deep, I would throw the blood stop powder on it and then I would disinfect and wrap the hoof to keep, a staph infection from getting in their foot, essentially. And then that's how I would have treated it if I had cut too deep. But thankfully I didn't. Another option if you don't have any blood stop powder on you is cornstarch. That can always go inside your first aid kit as well.
Yeah, good stuff.
But goats are super dramatic and they don't like it when you hold on to their feet.
Yeah, that's true. They're super dramatic about everything.
My neighbor got a really great video and it's posted inside the group. That was Darby. Did you see it?
Yeah, it's so cute.
My neighbor Nate, the one that you said you'd like and get along with really well, he was the one that
Yeah.
was yelling along with her when she started screaming.
If you can't beat them,
So
you
if
gotta
anybody
join
wants to see what
them.
it looked like the first time I trimmed a goat's hooves, that video is in the Facebook group.
Yeah.
Well, that's all I got for this week.
Yeah, I think I'm on the same page with you. I don't have anything else.
Well,
So
good. This
yeah.
was a nice, we're getting into an episode groove. It's
We
episode
are.
30, so I'm not super surprised by that.
No, yeah, we're 30 and as you've written here, 30 is the new 20. So we're still a pretty young podcast.
Yeah, I was like, I don't know if I want to go backwards in podcast numbers because then it makes us a little less
No.
experienced, but
Yeah.
I don't know. I thought it was funny and catchy.
Yeah, I mean 30 plus a few mini-sodes. And I'm excited for the one that we recorded today to drop with Farm to Table Mama. I can't wait for you guys to hear that. If it's before this or after this, I don't know. We'll find out.
Yeah, it just kind of depends on when I can get things edited. So we'll see. If it doesn't drop before this episode, then you'll probably see it Wednesday coming up.
Yeah, either way, it's good stuff, and I'm excited to have her on for future episodes as we continue that saga, and you guys will learn more about that when you get to listen to it.
That's right. Well, thanks for listening, guys. We always have a blast.
This was fun, and just to remind you, where we drink and we farm things, and I'm Sam.
And I'm Bev.
Yeah. And make sure you follow us over on Instagram at Drink and Farm. We like to check out your guys' posts when you use hashtag Drink and Farm. And me and Bev will pick 2 photos a week to what's the word? Feature.
Feature's a good word.
Yeah. On our Instagram. So people can see how you drink and farm safely. And we pick randomly. It could be from weeks ago. It could be from that week. So there are really no rules other than just please be safe.
That's right. So drink
Farm and give 0 clucks.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Oops, I hit the wrong button.